if women got into entrepreneurship at the same rate or got funding at the same rate as men, we would add 250 billion to the UK economy.
Yeah.
That's quite a lot of money. It feels like such a missed opportunity. How has that not moved the needle? VCs should be embarrassed, and so should like the whole industry.
Meet Grace Beverley, the 28-year-old entrepreneur, podcaster, and social media star behind a multi-million-pound empire. Since turning 50 pounds into millions with her fitness app, Shreddy, she has gone on to build an e-com powerhouse with fashion brand TALA.
Fashion's the most grueling, for sure.
Why is that?
Well, because you've got to win over and over and over.
Now she's back with her fourth business, Retrograde.
An AI-powered talent agency.
Raises 1.8 million euros.
We have hundreds and hundreds of deals with the biggest brands in the
All
world.
while lobbying the government to close an ever-growing gender funding
If you
gap.
thought it was better for mixed gender teams, actually, it would decrease your chances of getting funding by 85%. 85%.
Insane. What is the solution to this?
Join us for a dinner with Grace in Lisbon.
It wasn't just me. I'm no longer an influencer, surprise.
Jamie becomes the most pessimistic man I've ever met in my entire
A
life.
realist, I would say. Yeah.
And that brings us down to business. Amazing.
Amazing.
Thank you so much. Wow, that looks incredible.
That is phenomenal. You're glad you didn't eat before now.
Yeah, imagine me pretending.
It's like the starter.
Me pretending, being like, so full.
I love it.
I think it says the piparras, then you have purple cabbage, beetroot burnt with some very limey vinaigrette, the tahini.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Grace, we need you to tell us about your engagement. I loved the video of you in the bathroom.
Going insane. I forget
yeah.
that anyone I know can see that.
That's so funny though.
It's like a real disconnect between putting something on social media and being like, this is funny for other people, and then being like, fuck. People actually know me.
That led to the engagement?
Yeah.
So you were right.
My spidey senses
Oh,
were correct.
you were spot on. Over the weekend with my fiance, we were running through a bunch of your stuff, and it came to your like proposal pictures, and she was like, Jesus, Jack. She's like, what a terrible proposal you did for me. Like she was watching all this, and I was looking at it being like, this makes me look so bad. As a potential husband, I was like, yeah, I went down to Cork to propose to her, and I asked her dad on the Saturday night, but her brothers decided to bring me out for beers, and I went out, and I'd say I had 15 pints of Beamish with the brothers that they just like, I couldn't possibly leave. Got home at 4 a.m. My whole plans was to get up next morning and go for a run to a really nice viewpoint and do it up there. I couldn't get out of bed. So I ended up doing it around the corner from our house in the rain at like 6 o'clock in the evening, because it'd gotten so late. My mum and dad were ringing me and my brother being like, did something go wrong? Is everything okay?
Stop.
Yeah, it was like
So romantic.
the worst story of all time.
Speaking of hilarious, asking the parents, my fiance obviously like spoken about getting engaged, but he'd done it in a way where he was like, we're going to speak about this once and we're never going to speak about this again. And you don't know if this is going to be in 5 years, in 5 days, in like, but I want to get a few things like clear.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, which I think is good.
It's a good approach.
Adults, you don't want to be like,
Big time.
actually no.
Yeah.
But so I'd always said, I was like, I think my mum would be pissed off if you didn't ask her. And my mum had got married like the week before he was going to propose, and he didn't want to ask before her wedding because he didn't want it to be like to take like take away from that. He was like, the only window I could ask her was the week after when she was on her honeymoon, and so he was like, I'll give her a call. My family's not like a give a call, drop in, like all of this like very like close fun situation. And so he gives her a call, and she goes, hello, what's happened? And he was like, hi Vicky, how are you? How's the honeymoon? She's like, what's happened? What is it? What is it? And he's like, how are you? Like, these situations, he's just been like grilled upon entrance of like, why would we ever spend time together if this was not for a reason, or if someone hasn't died? And then so he just keeps going. He was like, how is it? Are you having a great time? She's like, yes, what is it? Has something happened? He's like, I'm just wondering if I can marry your daughter. She's like, oh, that's lovely.
Oh, I love
The
it.
poor man's been through the fucking ringer before he's even got to be able to ask me, based on the fact that both parents are just confused.
Last time we met, we were having dinner with Jake in Dublin.
Mm-hmm.
You've gone on to start Retrograde with him since then. What made you decide to start something with that chancer?
Well, I think it's obviously an industry I've been in for a very long time. I find myself getting like a lot of inbound from creators who want to start a business or who want to know something about a management agency or like have had an issue with something. Like, it is the thing I spend most time talking about, is just how this industry has grown for well over a decade now. And I do feel like while there are amazing agents out there, what's happened is like we've been trying to shoehorn like creators into the agency model rather than building like an agency model that works for creators.
Sure.
And these aren't people who are earning, you know, a few £100 a month. These are
Yeah.
people who are earning hundreds of thousands a year, who are not necessarily getting the type of service they need. And so this is like such a defining part of my week. Every week is having these conversations and people being like, can I send you a voice note of what's happened here? Can I send you, you know, like this? And so as soon as Jake talked to me about the concept, I was like, well, I've always thought there's something that needs to be done about this. I do not have the ability, the capacity, the tech knowledge. Like, I've always thought I would just maybe start an agency. Like, maybe I would just start an agency and try and do it in a way that I feel like is better suited to creators. And he was talking to me about it and I was instantly like, yes. Like, I was not looking for anything at all. In fact, completely the opposite. And I couldn't stop thinking about it for a long time. So I'd said, I was like, I'm interested, like, tell me more, show me more. He built some tech in his friend's inbox that could, you know, break it down and all of this. And I was like, right, for fuck's sake, gonna have to do this. It's one of those ideas that, you know, when you just keep thinking about something and you're like,
that's when you know.
Yeah, I remember even with the Go House. So we did this like TikTok house in Dublin and then in LA and a few other places. I remember sitting with Jake one day and he brought me through their Instagram mailbox and he was like, there's a 20 grand deal. There's a 20 grand deal. There's a whatever. No response, nothing done, no way of telling. It's in the middle of hundreds of other messages. And he was just like, this is incredible. He's like, I can sit there and just straight away find them like a few 100,000 from doing absolutely nothing.
And I think that's what has been so validating as well since we've actually got it off the ground, has been the fact that like we haven't even been able to get to creators that aren't making a few 100,000 a year yet. Actually, like the people with millions and millions and millions of followers on who immediately joined the waitlist and now have onboarded onto the product are like, we haven't even been able to get close to anyone who's not earning, you know,
So massive amounts. That's incredible
which,
as well.
which
That you
goes
can get them on even in the first place.
Well, exactly, and it also goes to show how much, like, we've assumed this one-size-fits-all model works for everyone. The choice doesn't have to be between you finding an amazing agent that you instantly gel with or you managing yourself and having like a glorified desk job. So you can have an in-between.
I've no doubt it's going to be huge, to be honest with you.
Looking forward to it. No, but it's been so exciting already. Like, even just like seeing the, like, we're technically under 3 months since we closed the round. And seeing if you look on the dashboard, we have hundreds and hundreds of deals with these biggest brands in the world. Like, every single big brand you think of when you think of a big brand, they are in that dashboard. And they're, you know, it's like 10 grand here, 20 grand here. Like, it is really exciting. It's a very different type of business to the one I've done before. Like, the ones I've done before, it's you know if a product's there and you know that pretty instantly because people part with their money for the product.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's very different to like an ongoing service
Sure.
that you're giving them, and that service having never been done before and then being like, oh, this doesn't really work. Let's try this again. Let's try change this, all of that.
Big time.
Yeah, it's been really exciting.
Is that very different actually? Because they are two different businesses. Is it a different, I guess, dopamine hit when you see the sales come in for a physical product that's been bought versus software that's scaling? Or is, I guess, success and you're happy to see there?
No, I think that, you know, I build things to be a nice even amount of dopamine hits from all directions, you know? And it definitely is different. Like, for a product launch, you know if it's gone well pretty
Yeah.
immediately, especially in something like fashion.
Sure.
People might like a design, that doesn't mean they like your whole brand. And whereas it's definitely more of a slow burn with a service,
Of course.
it's very easy to get like, oh, you know,
Bogged down.
like, is this it? Like,
Yeah.
was that the point we could scale to all
Yeah.
of that? That happens across all of the businesses.
Trust me, Jamie
know.
becomes the most pessimistic man I've ever met in my
Really?
entire life. every
Realist, I would
second
say,
week.
yeah.
Really?
Realistic, is that what you
Fact
call it?
is-
I love it.
I think fashion's the most grueling for sure.
Really?
Like,
Why is that?
well, because you've got to win over and over and over.
It's
You
seasonal
can't,
as
yeah.
well.
Like Shreddy is probably more akin to Retrograde in that, I mean, we've got physical product, but actually our tech
Yeah.
platform essentially is, you know, a big part of the business.
Yeah.
And that's coming in every month as long as the product's good.
Yeah.
And it's the type of business where you need access to it and therefore you still pay for it and like all of this. Like I could meet you in the street and you could say you were Tala's biggest fan. And you could have not had an interaction with us for 2 years.
Sure.
And
yeah,
you could still be that. And actually, like, we had something inbound from an investor the other day being like, I'm starting to think that the issue might be that all of the stuff I've had from you has lasted so long that I've decided not to buy
Oh,
anything.
really?
I'm like,
Good
good
problem.
in some ways. Existential issues for our business. But yeah, I think it flies around in circles.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. The
How
end.
am I the one who's been answering the questions?
Yeah, I
the
was
one
like,
who's,
that's so
wiped the plate
impressive.
clean?
It's so impressive.
Oh, wow.
Thank you very much.
It's amazing.
It's a local variety of beans. I'm cooking them with some miso, some mushrooms, some sesame oil. Has also some vinegar for freshness.
Sounds amazing.
Amazing, thank you so
very
much.
Yeah.
Wow, this looks incredible.
It does, doesn't it?
Talking about having 4 businesses and, you know, coming from, you're in Harvard yesterday or Boston, like yesterday, flying over here. How do you find managing all of that?
Ask me another day. Badly, I'd say today. I a lot of prioritization, which actually inherently means, you know, deprioritizing a lot of things that if I was a founder of one thing should be a priority, which means building up really, really good teams and support systems.
Sure.
Because it's still my role. Like, it's still my role. I still need to fulfill my contractual obligations. I still need to fulfill what I need to fulfill to the company.
Sure.
So if I don't have either myself or the people or the processes in place to make that happen, then I'm the one who's not getting it right. It's not on anyone else. And so it's a mix of people and processes. Also, on a point on that is hiring very transparently. Like, if anyone will tell you, if they have been interviewed by me, I will sit there and tell you everything terrible about that job and company. It's like, I want to convince them out of it, because if at that point they still want it, then great. I'm under no illusion that I do have high standards and high expectations, and you can't do the types of things that I hope to do without that. And therefore it's like, I would rather you literally come away from this interview and be like, what a raging bitch. Hated that. What I don't want is for you to be like, yeah, great, that sounds really exciting and really glamorous, and I'm saying, and you get travel and you get this and you get this. It's like, yeah, but all of those things come at a cost.
It was one thing in your book, actually, the pie chart I really liked, but it sounds like for you right now, that's mostly made up of work and career in your businesses.
Yeah, although actually, like, I don't want to put across anything that's like work is not the only thing I do. In fact, I would probably say my work ethic is less good than it was a few years ago. And that's not to say that I work really hard, but like, priorities have shifted. Like, I'm really, really good at, like, if I'm having an evening at home, I will spend time with my fiance and I will not, you know, like, I will not be working unless there is a disaster.
Yeah, nice.
Like, when I was at uni,
Yeah.
even like different type of work, but I was uploading on YouTube Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 5 p.m. every single week for about 3-4 years. 10,000 words a week, building the businesses, posting on Instagram, sometimes 5 times a day.
Oh my God.
Which now the algorithm would not like. At the time, I do have to say, it wasn't just me. But yeah, like, as in, and I would get home from the library and I just, no, because it was like,
yeah,
it was fun, it was a game, I was being so highly rewarded by it as well. It wasn't like,
of course.
out of the goodness of my own heart. But yeah, it was like, like I will say I have a toxic relationship with work at some points, and I'm not sure you can build companies without having a toxic relationship with work. That is also something I'd say.
How is your pie chart now, would you say?
How's my pie chart now? I think when we were building Wayflyer, my pie just got so big from like a work perspective. Like I even
There was
think
nothing else in
there was nothing else in there. Like, it was just work. And like doing it this time around, before we even started or knew exactly what we were doing, me and you and Joe sat down and we said, all right, no matter what this time around, if someone's getting burnt out or anything, they're going to be forced to go on holidays for a while.
Yeah. When we first started Happy Stack, that when we come here, it has to be more balanced. But I got thinking about it when I actually left Wayflyer from burnout. It was when I was working the least amount of hours in a week, but I was the most burnt out. And I couldn't really, was in denial. Basically, my wife was like, you have to leave, like you're so burnt out. I was like, I can't be burnt out. I'm working half the amount of hours I used to.
Yeah.
But it's not hours worked at a table. It's an energy and a buzz and something you love doing or excited by. You actually can work a lot more and be a lot more comfortable in that.
It's mental load.
It is.
One of the things I've realised recently is like how the fuck women in particular with children who run businesses, like the mental load of like even just like that kind of caregiving role, and then also the mental load of like every single thing in the business, and then being like, oh, probably if we don't do this, the business does probably fail. And you go home and you have a lovely evening and you enjoy that, you know, and it's just like constant again and again and again.
And remember Aisling, who used to work with us in partnerships, like she started a company Glitch, but she actually started it when she got pregnant. Like launched the company, started it when she got pregnant, grew the thing, raised money, then managed to bring in someone basically to cover her for a while. I'm just like, that's the most impressive thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Like,
well, it says so much that I always used to, and I don't think this now, but I always, if you'd asked me 3-4 years ago, I would have said I would have exited before I would have children. And like that says so much about like how
the state of things.
And like how badly we prepare, or like how badly we set up things like entrepreneurship and raising money and all of these things for in particular, and I say women because still statistically they are in the primary caregiving role. When you're signing a funding round, there's always this wording that's like, and this is very standard, it's like, is anyone, when you're doing the due diligence, it's like, is anyone in the management team going to go on maternity leave in the next like year? And it's like, so you can't ask if I'm pregnant, you can't ask if I'm married, you can't ask if any of these things that you can't hire for. But technically, if I say no to this, that's fraud. Like that's fraudulent. But technically, the only person that affects, and it's like, well, then how do we fix anything around like the funding gap and all of this? When it's like, I literally have to answer that legally.
It's crazy.
Like I legally can't take the money. I know, and I saw it, and I just saw it, and I was like, I understand why they have to ask that.
But it's worded in such a way as well that they get around.
Well, because you can't say, are you pregnant? Or would you like to have children soon? But you can say, is anyone in the leadership team about to take maternity leave?
But how do you fix that? You know, like is that... And also I saw recently you posted on LinkedIn about that gender funding gap, only 2% of founders are female from VC funding. Like, what is the solution to this?
Yeah, to recap, obviously, highest year ever, only 2% of venture capital funding has gone to women-owned businesses. I did a post when we announced Retrograde as well, basically saying, if you thought it was better for mixed gender teams, actually, statistically, by adding, so like if you guys were going to found something and then you decided to add an extra, should be good, should be an addition, it's a whole other person, it would decrease your chances of getting funding by 85%.
It's insane, isn't it?
85%.
That's insane.
First of all, that's a huge disincentive. If you knew that, would you be like, let's ask this woman to join the team? Statistically, if you're a first-time founder and you're trying to raise money and you have zero, like, you don't want to hurt your chances. So then how are women ever going to start being asked on founding teams, being asked to like I see all the time women posting on like funding groups and angel groups and all of this being like, I'm trying to find an engineer co-founder, I'm trying to find this co-founder. It's like, if you were the person in that role, would you choose a woman to join their team when you statistically know that you, by joining them, you are making it harder for yourself?
And it's hard, and it's pretty hard.
It's like, it's a terrible self-perpetuating cycle. But lots of different ways to start. Currently doing nothing, it seems, the whole industry. That's where we start to get angry on LinkedIn. People like me. But I think there's lots of different areas. There's all the way back to things like education, which encourage, you know, people are always saying, oh, well, we don't have the women who are coming to us and all of this. And it's like,
yeah, but that's not, you have to be you also have to be proactive there, because you get that a lot from recruiters when they send you through 10 CVs for a data role or an engineering role, and it's like, well, that's 10 guys. But it's like, I need you to send me through an even split here.
You have to be proactive. It's the same with any DEI stuff. It's like you have to like be.
You're not going to come knocking on your door.
Exactly, and especially if they're told statistically you're getting fucking nowhere here, and you're like, oh, but why aren't they coming to me? It's like, well, because they don't want to waste their time. And so there's all the way back to education. I've obviously just done like a business course, and I was thinking the other day, like, why don't we just put something like that into schools? Like, why don't we, you know, like, as an I don't care. Like, have it. Like, it's a digital product, you know. But like, even just getting people to be able to, like, at that level, be able to access something that's like a step-by-step thing for them to be able to be like, do I want to do this or not? Just having that, because there was zero assumption or education or encouragement of entrepreneurship in and I came from like a very privileged private school background, so like if I didn't get that, then imagine what it is in like a state-based background. It's just like, it's very unrealistic that anyone's going to come out of that, which is so crazy, because we know that entrepreneurship rates are so much higher in communities that don't have access to things like private education, because entrepreneurship is often the way where you can create something. Like, it's you're forced to do it. It's very much like, how can I, you know, hustle and create this and get some money for it outside of like this job or whatever. So something's very wrong there. We need more women on investment committees. We need more. I think I would personally say the way to fix this now, and there should be a task force on it, and I think there is starting to be a task force on it, which is fantastic. At least in the UK. I do think that as part of that, a big piece of research needs to be done, because the way that research can move the needle is by being like, actually, you know, we had the Rose Review, for example, that showed that if women got into entrepreneurship at the same rate as men, or got funding at the same rate as men, we would add 250 billion to the UK economy. So it's like, that's quite a lot of money. I don't know about you guys. I don't like that. So, you know, that type of thing is an incentive, because I think there's I've done some work with the government on it when I was getting really angry on LinkedIn. And I remember, like, a lot of the ways it's talked about is kind of like, well, we could do this and then we could put this aside, and it's like, it's not a charity. Like, women return much higher than men, and like that's not to, you know, it's a smaller sample size, and that's not to be like, you know, that's a good thing. Brilliant. That means that there's more opportunity here for investors. So it's like, okay, this is not a charity move. This is not for you to be like, oh, we'll give the people like a few pennies. It's like, this builds better business. This builds, especially for places like the UK. Like, you're a small place. Like, make the UK a good place to be a female entrepreneur, and people will come. People will come, and they will start things up, and they will, you know, there is a way that we could be a like world leader in this. Same with like any other country, because the sad thing is, there is no place in the world where that funding stat is better than 2%. So it's not just like one bad place.
You know what? I think about this a lot, not in a slightly different context, but in the context of how do we create more entrepreneurs in Ireland. In school and university, girls and women beat the crap out of us, like, every single time. I'm like, if you take like social media, which is like the biggest distribution, I just went online, I was like, okay, it's 50-50 split of people, but women have more followers and significantly more, so they're probably better at distribution than we are. If you if you took an average man and an average woman, I'd say you're probably going to beat, women are going to beat men every time. I think the same thing with Ireland. We opened an office in the US, and the US is such an entrepreneurial culture because so many people have done it before. But Irish people are super smart, really smart, hardworking, and I always good at sales, like all the talent. And I always think, if you took an average Irish man and an average US person, we'd probably beat them every single time in terms of entrepreneurship. But no one has the confidence to do it because we haven't like seen that many people do it ahead.
I also think there is a bit of a barrier when it comes to smaller economies and smaller populations. It is so much harder to succeed at like a basic level, because if you think of like, I think about this a lot with like TALA, for example. If I were to press these 3 buttons, one on, you know, Meta, one on influencer, one on this, how many people would I reach in the UK? Like just with those 3 buttons, how many people would I reach in the UK? If you did those exact same 3 buttons in the US, the quantity of people that you would reach is so much bigger. So it's also like the success rates are naturally so much higher because
there's so many more people
there's so many more people to reach, which does make it tough. But that's why with something like the female entrepreneurship stats, it's like, okay, well, it's not better in the US. It's like we can't actually lean on something like that. It's like I totally understand why people go to the US for funding, why they go to the US for starting the market, like whatever they're doing.
I think though you have to do it at 2 sides. There's people who are going to be entrepreneurs and there's getting the funding for them, which we need to do, but like that's not going to get it to 50-50. You know, that's only going to get a little up. Like you said about education, it has to be grassroots. It has to be, how do we go and actually convince someone who's really smart to go, I'm going to go start a business. How you have to incentivize it in some way.
100%.
So there's like no downsides to that. And that's the only way to
I think about that a lot. And I think about also the fact that like actually social media as a route to entrepreneurship has massively obviously increased over the past, you know, since social media was invented. Shock. But I do think that like, it's so funny that actually this stat hasn't changed because it's 2%, right? Social media is the one industry where women massively out-earn men. Like massively. And so it's like, how has the statistic not changed? Because you're telling me you bet on winners. And I'm sitting here, you know, and blah, blah, sitting here with much better ability to talk to people online, much more people to receive that because women consume media more in that way, all of this, and you're still being like, oh, but we're going with things we know work. And it's like, you're going, like, there's so many more things that you know now work, and you know it does because you've seen all of these, like, you know, non-backed businesses do insanely well through social media alone, and it's like, it feels like such a missed opportunity because it's like, well, surely even just tapping into that, like even just the like influencer brand type thing,
of course, massively.
How has that not moved the needle?
It's crazy.
Because these businesses are doing hundreds of millions a year.
Even just tapping into that, and if we started to make progression on the 2%, the compounding effects of that, because a big deterrent right now is, why would a female founder take that risk when they're, well, funding is so tough for women? All of a sudden, if we start to improve that, you get this compounding effect, which is, okay, I see others doing it now, okay, this is actually getting better and better, and all of a sudden there's more than being like, okay, I can give this a go. But to get that push at the minute, it has to be something else.
And that's why I've taken it on myself so aggressively to
amazing.
shout
Fair play.
about
Honestly,
it.
Amazing,
Never give a yapper a reason to yap. But here we are.
It's a good reason to yap.
And
it's a really
like
good reason
genuinely, because it's like, even like the female funding stat, it's like, we talk about the gender pay gap, as we should, but that's nowhere near as bad as this like 98.2%.
This is crazy.
And we think that it's irrelevant because it's like, okay, but it's in an industry. Like if I heard about, I don't know, something that was happening with hairdressers or like, I don't know, accountants or something, I'd be less interested in it because that's not what I do. But we forget the fact that literally every company that you use on a daily basis, like I'd say 90% of them are venture backed. So all of them are built by men in the image of men, creating products for men. Like, I'm not saying it because it's like, okay, women are getting fewer exits. It's like, no, people are building companies that are designed only for men.
Which is crazy.
Which is just, it's also just a huge untapped market.
But like, going back to it's not charity. Like this is like, and right now there's so much money went into the private markets, and like there's all this like dry powder not being deployed. Like there's money being given back to investors who put money in. Like they're searching for more entrepreneurs, and people aren't just like going like, hold on here a second, see this 2%. Be really easy to get that to 25 in the first place. That should be super easy, and then on to 50, and then on.
And it's so layered as well because it's also like every time we see like an initiative for women entrepreneurs, it's like it's very specific businesses. It's like small jewelry businesses and candle businesses and all of these, which have so much place to exist and like are fantastic in so many ways. But A, usually don't need to be venture backed.
Sure.
B, like, where are the tech companies? Where are like
Yeah.
the, you know, I don't know, manufacturing companies?
Yeah,
Where are
yeah.
the infrastructure? Like
Sure.
all of these things that are taking up the lion's share of the
time.
market. It's like, it's presented to you as like a male entrepreneur. I think you have a very clear view. Like if you think of it in your head,
yeah.
a female entrepreneur, you literally think of something completely different.
Yeah.
Like even I do, and that's so bad. It's like it shows how far we have to go. Like when we're like, how do we fix this? When I was like talking about that task force and talking, you know, like in the government and like actually spending time talking about that, it's like, I'm afraid it's not going to be a like,
It's not,
you know,
overnight
like
fix.
you
It's
do
10,
this one
20,
thing and we
yeah,
fix
it's a
this.
lot.
It's like, cool.
Yeah.
Here are like 3 different areas where we probably need to like inject and go in heavy.
How
That was
it?
so
amazing.
delicious.
Thank you, yeah.
Thank you
That
so
was
much.
so
I really
good.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Do you see that being a
Amazing,
big
thank you.
focus for you then, going from
Yeah.
influencer to brand founder to tech entrepreneur, now into this space addressing funding, gender funding gap?
I'm really good at being angry about things on principle, so it does lend itself to me very naturally.
Yeah.
You know, I like,
Thank you very much.
it's funny, even from like the early YouTube days, the amount of, I don't know, anything that happened that was like mildly like political or like you should care about this, it would be like
love it.
so there's that, but I also, I don't know, I find it kind of depressing that like every time I've like raised funding, for example, it's not, if you were to get like a list of like top men raised in the UK, I wouldn't even come in the top like thousands upon thousands. Like I just wouldn't.
Yeah.
Women, when you look at a venture capital list, like I'm still not like way up there, but I feature on pretty much every list. Like that's depressing. So I haven't even like, you know, it's like that's
businesses
so
that were profitable too. that
right,
didn't
exactly.
need
As
it,
in
so
like
you-
exactly.
Yeah, which is
It's
crazy.
like it doesn't. It feels constantly like the reason why I've been rewarded for this and people clap for it is because it's so unexpected, and that's so ridiculous.
It
Like
is,
that makes me angry because it's like at this stage I hope I'm still only at the beginning of my journey. So like the fact that you're like, wow,
I know.
it's like that's, I really appreciate it. It's great for my validation, but it's like that.
We have
shouldn't
made
be
the
that big a
fundamental
deal.
It
change.
shouldn't be that big a deal. It should be
just be
happening all over
done.
in all different industries, and it should be making press, and it should be excited. Like even, I won't out specific publications because I don't want them to cover me at some point. But like even every time I've done a funding round, and you do like funding round press, so you go to, you know, you put out your press release and you go to talk to them about it, and you're just like, you know, this is what we've done. They come back and they're like, oh, we don't cover rounds under 50 million. And I'm like, cool.
That's
How many women have you been able to cover
Yeah.
in the past few years? Like genuinely, don't cover me, but like
How
how many women would qualify for your coverage? And therefore, are you saying that like statistically, probably it's like we're going to see a white man in here every single
time.
week? Like as in like that, even the fact that they feel confident enough to come back and say we only cover those raises, it's like you're not even aware of how like
do they respond to
VCs
that?
should be in,
Yeah.
VCs should be embarrassed, and so should like the whole industry. In the UK, your national insurance is going into the British Business Bank, which is going into the
them,
VCs. So that is going into the
you're paying
VCs
for
to
it.
boost it. So all of, not you guys, you're
It's
paying
all
some tax.
circular. Yeah.
We're paying for
Yeah.
VCs
Big
to
time.
invest only in, and that's bad. 98-2, that is bad.
That's
No
shocking.
one should be co-signing that.
My fiance actually is at the moment. She's setting up a female only fund.
Amazing.
Yeah. So I was laughing earlier
Thank
to
you.
Jamie.
Wow.
Jamie saying the last time I met Grace Beverley, you know, a company started off the back of it. You know, I think Grace would be great as the face of a female-led fund. You know, think of all the entrepreneurs who'd get into it. She's only got 4 businesses going. You know.
That's why we wanted to meet you in Portugal.
And that brings us down to business.
Let's get into it.
No, but that's amazing.
Yeah,
That's really
she's-
cool.
Yeah.
It is.
So we have pumpkin ice cream. soy yogurt with cardamom, also some pepper. On top you have olive oil and sage leaves in tempura.
Amazing.
Nice,
That's
amazing.
phenomenal.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's been
Amazing.
delicious. Thank you.
In an age now where every single founder in the world is trying to do content, eh?
Badly.
Badly.
Except for today, it's been great. Sorry.
You obviously have kind of taken a slightly different approach where you're almost like pulling yourself back out of the brand, which just seems so strange to someone from the outside in a lot of ways, you know? What drives that, you know, those decisions to do that?
So I think already fighting a bit of a losing battle being taken seriously as a female entrepreneur.
Okay,
I hate
gotcha.
to bring it back.
Yeah.
But that is
Yeah.
part of it, and there's a
Interesting.
part of social media that instantly takes away from your success as an entrepreneur based on the fact that it must be because it was all handed to you.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I will be the first to say social media has given like huge benefits to my businesses, but they are also benefits that I built, and built within the businesses and all of that. Other, you know, background privileges, like absolutely. When you're talking about like this thing in particular, though, we often look at women's businesses and social media businesses and we say like, yes, but they had a following. And it's like, cool, were they born with it? Like,
Yeah,
is it, like,
yeah.
genuine?
They
When we're
literally
talking about
gain
like
that. That's the
private
tough part,
school, private
getting the following.
education, like
Yeah.
all of this, like yes, absolutely, very important context. However, we
Five
do it.
postings on
yeah,
Instagram
exactly,
a day,
exactly.
3 postings on YouTube a week.
Exactly.
Like,
It's like
Why is that
it's,
looked down on? Like, that is so difficult to grow a following.
I
That's the
know.
tough part.
yeah, I know, and I think it's because, well, I do think part of it is that we've always seen influencers as like a homogenous group, and we've seen it as kind of, you know, we've seen a mix of reality TV and entrepreneurs and models and actors and, you know, people on TikTok and like all of this.
Yeah.
We've seen influencers as influencers.
Sure.
Like you have a very specific vision of an influencer that comes to mind when you think of them, and it is likely derogatory in a
it
sense.
is. No, it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
So I think that it then naturally feels easier to you know it does take away in some
Take away
ways.
from the
Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
She had the following
That was-
before.
yeah.
It was just off the
Yeah,
back of that.
which
It's-
absolutely
but-
I
but
did.
it's- yeah, I know.
But that's
it's-
also why I, you know, like as in
Yeah.
like that was the strategy, which a good strategy is a good strategy.
Yeah.
I couldn't
So
agree
it's
more.
kind of, yeah, it's kind of like you wouldn't say that being like, I don't know, to you being like, well, you had the tech background.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
like,
yeah.
yes,
No. Yeah.
that's actually why it makes
Yeah.
sense
We're
to do it.
literally what 7 years late coming
Yeah.
to the party of
Oh,
trying
yeah.
to do similar things. So
And also that type of thing directly translates to that doesn't happen in a silo. That's not like the only way that social media is beneficial. It's like if you're taking that and you're putting that into the business you're creating, then what can we do with that? Like
Yeah.
essentially what you're saying is that person's really good at marketing.
Yeah,
that's
it.
the
So
best,
it's like,
the best at
as in,
marketing
like,
in the world.
brilliant.
Yeah.
But I would say that's part of it. I would also say, you know, I spoke before the episode started about how a few years ago, like when I basically decided, when I came out of university, I was so unclear with what I wanted to do. And I basically realized over the course of a few months that like full-time social media was never going to be my friend. Like, as in, it wasn't very suited to what I enjoy, how I feel fulfilled, all of this. Like, I'm a person who likes to work with people. I like to problem solve with people. I like to all of this. And it just wasn't fitting actually my skill set. I think it fit my skill set when I was doing something else as my full-time thing. Like I was studying very full-time. So it was a part-time thing. I've never actually been full-time social media.
Yeah.
And so I just realized that it wasn't the social media that I enjoyed. It was the social media as like a complement to doing something else that I enjoyed. And so obviously in that moment, I, as I said, deleted all of my YouTube videos overnight, like was just very much like, I'm no longer an influencer, surprise. And that's a lesson in rebranding.
Yeah.
A big pivot. But I did just know that like if I hadn't done that, I would make it so easy for myself to be like, cool, well this week's hard. So like, and like this strategy didn't work. So I'm going to just foot it all myself with my own following. Like that's not how you build a strong business that's not dependent on one person.
Sure. Yeah.
So, and that was one thing that I really wanted to do as well. I wanted to feel like I'd built the business as a viable and impressive business, not a merch vehicle.
Sure.
And so I obviously did that then. I spent a few years doing very little social media. Honestly, if you followed me between that time and you still follow me now, you deserve an award. Because it was kind of like how your friend from school would post on social media.
Yeah.
Like you get a shit selfie every so often. And like you really wouldn't get that much more than that until about like 2 years ago. And that was just because I had committed and been like, this is my actual job.
Sure.
Like I'm going to the office every day. I literally built myself an office job in the parameters of like what I wanted. And now I've worked out what makes me happy and what makes and it's definitely not perfect. And I've got some things all the way off in balance at the moment, but I know generally what makes me feel fulfilled and what makes me feel like I could do this week after week after week after week.
Sure.
And so now I'm able to layer back on social media. And now I have a team that's able to help me with that whilst so that I can actually do my job. Whereas like social media was always what I did on the side. So it was almost always a side hustle, which was so much to add to my work.
Exactly.
And it just wasn't the top priority. But yeah, so that's kind of like why I stepped away, and now I'm able to use it how I want to.
Yeah.
Like I could not post on social media for the next 3 weeks and
Perfect.
everyone would be
problem.
fine. Like the team would be fine, I would be fine, the businesses would be fine, like all of this. And that's kind of the
That
ideal.
was the point.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the ability to not be ruled by this, but instead have it as a thing I enjoy and a tool.
A lever.
Like, exactly.
Yeah, nice.
What advice would you give to idiots doing content?
Trying
for
to go the other
first
way,
time?
I would really get clear on what you're trying to build, because I think it's very easy to like think of reach and followers as absolutely everything when it comes to social media, and I just like could not agree with that less. And I know that's quite easy to say coming from someone with like a macro following, but I do genuinely believe that the 1,000 true fans thing is so much better than like
Big time.
and this is why I think it's actually quite more complicated now on social, because there are so many different vehicles for like virality versus like community, and like you could be doing everything right on TikTok and on Instagram Reels and getting loads of impressions and loads of reach, and it could be doing zero to move the needle. Like I was on my podcast, I talked to the founder of Lux Collective, and he was saying like the year where they built social media, like I think they grew like millions that year. The year where they grew the most was their least successful sales conversion wise.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's because
Just not the right audience.
because you can do things to grow that do not translate to sales, and I think people think of it as the silver bullet. And so it's like, what do you want it for? Do you want it to build knowledge of the brand? Do you want it to help with an exit because you become a brand that people like to follow, and then becomes a bit of a cult following, or becomes the first thing people think of when they think of, you know, your service? Is it just that you want to have fun and like showcase the thing? Is it that you want to get loads of followers? Like I think that lots of people think of a metric as an end goal rather than a means to an end goal. Like followers isn't a goal. Followers, in order to lead to community or sales or all of this, that is an end goal. So I would get really, really clear on that, and then you work the content back from that. I think there are a few companies doing really well at the moment just because they're sharing the journey so well, and you just get invested even if you're not necessarily a customer. But if you're trying to just get customers, then that's not gonna
it's different.
help.
Exactly.
So I would just get really clear on that, and then like reverse engineer from that point. I think too many people are trying to just like throw shit at the wall in order to get, people are like, I don't know, I see social media consultancy all the time being like, we got these views and these views and these views. It's like, don't get me wrong, thank you so much. Like that is incredibly impressive. But it's like, was the aim just views? Was the aim just to be able to report to someone to say you got views? Or was it,
It's
There's an angle here.
or is that person going to know your brand name? Or, you know, more and more, this like 1,000 true fans thing
I think
comes above everything else.
I think for us too, when it's like B2B in particular, you're such a small subset of people that you're trying to get in front of. It's not like we're trying to get in front of, you know, 50% of like the world. It's like someone very specific building a very specific product. And so when it's that, it's, you know, if you don't build content that's going to be interesting to them, then what's the point in doing it in the first place? Well, Grace, thank you very much
Yeah.
for coming on.
Thank you
You're a
so
legend.
much
This
for
has been
having me.
Really,
really
really
amazing,
appreciate
yeah.
it.
Thanks
So,
for the food.
Good, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah, it was really
so
phenomenal.
good.
Yeah.
phenomenal.